All right, welcome to the show today, guys. You're here with two Dans, not just one. The guest is Dan Grieb from Orlando, Florida. Dan is one of the most successful real estate agents in Keller Williams. He's going to tell his story of how he went from real estate agent, solo entrepreneur, to running a team, creating opportunity for his teammates, and then how that's led to other business opportunities. He sells hundreds of homes each year through his home to sell team. And right now he's starting a really exciting coaching business that's actually powered by Keller Williams MAPS program. So we'll talk about that, I'm sure. So welcome, Dan.
Thank you for having me, Daniel. It's going to be a fun time sharing the story. A lot of the same journeys that I've been on, you've been on as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they intertwine.
Yeah, it's been cool to have gotten to know you the last couple of years and watch our growth path and all of that. And you've actually recently trained some members on my team, so maybe we'll get into that. But let's start off by describing your journey from solo real estate agent to running a large, successful, and highly efficient team, because you put up some really impressive numbers without having like a ginormous team. You've definitely got some awesome people there. So it's not like it's just you, but you're doing a lot with what you have, which is always fun to see.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, yeah. So let's start with kind of how I started here. I grew up the product of a single mom, Long Island, New York, came down to Florida, played football at the University of Central Florida. Lifelong dream was to be a cop. Was able to be a police officer, got it promoted up through the ranks. And, I was recently telling the story to one of my coaching clients about my why. And, they were saying, I'm searching for my why. And I was saying, my why changed over and over and over again. And it will in life. Your why will change. So my why was to accomplish this goal of being a cop. Then my why was, to make a little bit of money being a cop. So I got promoted and ended up working on a regional task force doing drugs. And then my wife and I had a baby, and my why was to keep the city, the streets, and the streets in the county in which I lived safe for my wife and kids. Then we had another kid, and I wanted my wife to continue to stay home with our kids, but I wasn't making much money. So my why changed, and I left being a police officer, and I got into real estate. And then I had a pretty successful first year. My first year in real estate, I hired a coach before I even could afford one. I'll be happy to tell you that story later. And I sold 42 houses my first year in real estate and made $242,000. So I went from $60,000 in income to $242,000 in income in 1 year.
Wow.
However,
wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, it was a big jump, right, Daniel? But here's the deal, I think it was Jay-Z in his song that says, more money, more problems, right? And it's not necessarily more problems. It's you have to understand the rules of money, and there are certain rules of money. And when you make money that fast, you can lose money that fast. When you make money slowly and steadily, oftentimes you learn the lessons along the way. But when you quickly go from one economic scale all the way to another economic scale, you miss the lessons. And if you're not careful, those lessons will come back to you, and you'll have to learn them very difficultly. And for me, I was under the impression that real estate would always be like real estate was. The market corrected, and a year later, I'm facing foreclosure on my house. I'm getting cars repossessed. I'm watching investment properties that I never should have owned being repossessed and foreclosed on. And now I owe the IRS $70,000.
Woo.
Yeah. So there were lessons to be learned, right? And this is what makes me an effective business coach, is because I had to learn the lessons the hard way. And those lessons were, number one, always save money for your taxes. Have a budget, live within the means of your budget. Recognize the fact that what got you to where you are today may not be what can get you to the next level. Prepare for the next market, not the market you're in. If you're on a high market now, build your business to support a down market. And if you're in a down market now, build your business to support the next market. Because if you don't, you'll be caught off guard by the next market. There's always a next market. The next one is don't over leverage yourself. If you're living on credit cards or high mortgage balances, recognize that those are traps. The truly wealthy do not live with those kind of high balance credit cards, high mortgage. They're not super leveraged. They have a fair amount of leverage and they're smart with that, but they recognize that it's just a tool. It's never actually your safety net. So I had to learn those things. It took me 3 years of being the number one real estate agent in my office, driving the worst car in the parking lot to learn those lessons. So I had to pay my way out of all that debt. And Daniel, if you don't mind, I'd like to kind of segue here into some rules that I had to learn to live by. Do you mind if I do that right now?
Yeah, let's do it. These are all great lessons. So I'm loving this. So let's hear it.
All right, beautiful. Well, I have developed these kind of 3 rules in which I live by. Number 1 is life is 10% about what happens and 90% about how you respond. Things are going to happen in life and you're going to have to respond. You may hurt people by the mistakes you make, the choices you make. You may hurt your family. You may financially hurt yourself. You just may make bad choices, whatever that is. But that's not the real test. The test is how you respond once you realize you've made the mistake. And that's where character is forged. The funny thing about character, Daniel, is character's like bravery. You don't get more character and you don't get more bravery unless you use it. If you don't have to do anything that requires character, then you don't generate more character inside yourself until you use the character. You don't generate more bravery unless you have to use the bravery you have, and then you generate more. So that's the first one. Life is 10% about what happens, 90% about how you respond. The second one is you are at the place, at the time, experiencing what you're supposed to be experiencing, going through what you're supposed to be going through, with whom you're supposed to be going through it at the exact time in your life that you should be going through it as preordained by the God of the universe. And the thought behind that is when you're going through it, and we all go through it, every great entrepreneur can point to a time where they went through it. Every great marriage can point to a time where they went through it. Every great relationship can point to a time where they went through it. Here's the question. When you're going through it, you have to ask yourself this: God, what are you preparing me for? See, Daniel, I wouldn't be my family's first millionaire. I wouldn't have the ability to talk to your audience today. I wouldn't be able to coach some of the amazing businesses that I coach today had I not gone through it. See, God was preparing me to manage the finances that I did not think that I would ever receive. His plans for me were bigger than my own plans for me. And I had to learn those lessons. And I'm thankful that I did. And the last one is simply this. Today is the first day of the rest of your life. I don't care about what happened yesterday. I mean, reality here is your listeners are going to hear this and you say, Dan, but you don't know. I've made some real mistakes. I know you have. I have too. Dan, you don't understand my circumstance. My circumstances are such, that they prevent me from accomplishing what you've accomplished or what Daniel Lesniak's accomplished or what some other people have accomplished. Maybe today or maybe yesterday, but today's the first day of the rest of your life. Today's the day you start taking the step in the right direction. Today's the day that you can change it all. Your marriage might be a mess right now, but I'll tell you what, today's the first day of the rest of your life. You could look back on 6 months from now and say, I'm glad I took those steps to rebuild my marriage. Or your business may be completely falling apart. You may have to shut it down. But you know what? Some of the best businesses ever created were created as a result of shutting down the wrong business so they could open up the right one. Today's the first day of the rest of your life. It can all be new tomorrow. It can all be new today because the choices you make today the choices you make today will be the results that you have today. The choices you made yesterday can't do anything about those. It's what are you going to do today? Because today is the first day of the rest of your life. Those are the 3 guiding forces that I had to learn to live through when I was watching my whole life fall apart financially.
Those are great stuff. I feel like we could end now and people could just get so much value just hearing that 5 minutes from you and all the rules you and nuggets you drop there. Just so powerful. One that I'd like to examine, you mentioned it earlier on, was, what got you here today won't necessarily get you to where you're going. I think you could even take that a step further, that what got you here today might not even keep you where you are now.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Right? Because if the market, and you kind of got into that in your next point after that, if the market shifts from being good to bad or bad to good, and you don't anticipate that, like, all that hard work could evaporate. So you got to be constantly looking ahead, preparing for the unexpected.
Absolutely. Well, let's unpack that one, and let's talk about that if you don't mind. So first thing is, let's not use the word good or bad market, right? So Zig Ziglar says in one of his famous quotes, the market's never been good or bad out there. The market's only good or bad in here. It is how we think about it. So let's talk about what we call a downward trending market or a down market, right? A down market is when the greatest transfer of wealth actually occurs. People don't make their money in an up market. They make their money in a down market. So for the example of real estate is due to have a correction. Now, nobody quite knows when the correction is going to occur, but it's due. We just know it's due. There's a large economic factors that have led to that. I can go into that if you want to. But we recognize the fact that we're due for a correction, either a flattening of the market, an actual correction where the market starts to dip down, home prices go down. That reality is yet to occur. And they're saying it's going to occur in 2020. Well, the rich, the smart people, the ones that are making decisions that are different than the rest. So you got the rich and the rest. What the rich know and the rich do is different than the rest. And what's funny is I have a saying about that I'll share with you as well if you want to hear it. As they're already saving money for the next market. They're saving their money. My wealthiest clients and I, including myself, we're physically tracking how much money can I save right now? How much money can I save for when the market corrects? For the possibility the market could correct, because I know that if I buy it right, I can sell it again on the next market cycle. I can get into these properties when things go on sale. And so we're already doing that. So I want to share with you another saying that I learned a long time ago. It says this, and it applies to anything, but because we're talking about real estate in this current moment, we're talking about business, I'm going to apply it to money. Rich people and poor people both hate the same things. Rich people do them anyway. Now I can apply it to anything. Healthy people and unhealthy people both hate eating broccoli. Like, I'm more of a healthy person. I've lost 100+ pounds. I know that you're a healthy person, that you run Ironman. We both do. We've done them together. I like pizza. If you gave me the option of broccoli or pizza, I'm choosing pizza every day. But I know if I want to be healthy, if I want to make my body perform at the level I need it to perform so I can do these athletic things that we're trying to do, that I have to do the things that I don't like to do anyway. I have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and work out. I have to eat more broccoli than I do pizza. I have to cut down my intake on ice cream. I love ice cream. I'm addicted to ice cream. But I know that if I eat chicken and vegetables, that my body will perform and I get to be healthier. Well, guess what? Unhealthy people and healthy people both hate waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, running a half marathon before they go to work, and eating broccoli all day. But you know what? Healthy people do it anyway. People that have great relationships with their spouses and people who don't have great relationships with their spouses, they hate the fact that they're sometimes right, but yet they have to just acquiesce and let their partner be right for the harmony of the family. See, the successful relationships, we just do it anyway. We give our spouses the benefit of the doubt anyway. We both hate doing it. I'd rather just be right. Face it, I'm a guy. I'm a D personality. I'd just rather be right. But you know what? I want to have a great relationship. So those that don't have a great relationship and those that do have a great relationship both hate the same things. The ones that have great relationships, they do it anyway. So anyway, that's my thoughts on that.
That's great stuff. I think that's super powerful. Love that framework. Man, that was awesome. Can you talk a little bit about how you went from solo agent to the home to sell team that you have now? Because that I'm sure that's a great story.
Yeah. Well, thank you, and I'd be happy to. So, when I first started in real estate, it was my job. It was never a business. As most people that go off into real estate or go off into their first level of sales, it's typically a job. And it was to replace the income that I had before as a police officer. I mean, if I was making $50,000-$60,000 a year as a police officer, working overtime, working on the weekends. And I first got into real estate to replace that income, to make $60,000. Now, every real estate agent says the same thing. If you were to interview, 9 out of 10 real estate agents that I interviewed today to come work on my team, I say, how much money do you want to make your first year? Do you know what their answer is? Always the same, Daniel. It's always the same in Orlando. $100,000.
Gotcha. Yep.
I never hear anybody that says I want to make $65,000. They always say $100,000. So for me, my goal was to make $100,000. Just like invest. Like if I could make $100,000, that would be great. But in reality, all I really wanted to make was $65,000. So it was my job. Now, good news is that I hired a coach right out of the gate who never allowed me to get stagnant. And I didn't have any money. When I hired my first coach, Daniel, I only had $3,000 in the bank. And my coaching bill was $1,000 a month. I had to make a sale my first month or else I couldn't pay my mortgage. I would struggle to put groceries on the table. And I made a sale my first month. So I had this humongous reason to perform right out of the gate. And that pushed me forward. Then obviously I ended up losing all the money and failing miserably my first year, which failure is an amazing tool for education. And I had to now rebuild it. It took me 3 years to rebuild it. So the first thing I did is I hired an administrative person. Now, bankruptcy is an option. And as a business coach, I totally understand the climate around declaring bankruptcy and the benefits to that. However, for me, it was not the right move. I felt like that if I was to declare bankruptcy, which is, by the way, what all of my idiot real estate friends were doing that had told me to go buy the most expensive house in the neighborhood, that I did, to go buy a BMW my first year, to go leverage myself. And I took their advice because I believed that they knew what they were talking about. All of them declared bankruptcy. But for me, I was not going to do that. And the reason why is because I saw that as me going to the government and saying, me hiding behind the government and saying, I've really screwed my life up. Will you please protect me? And I didn't want to. I wanted to learn the lessons and take this really high road that I knew would be difficult because I knew that I would be better if I went through it. So I ended up paying all the debts off myself and not declaring bankruptcy. It took me 3 years to do it just to get back to break even. And along the way, I had to build a team because I started to recognize the fact that I was reaching a ceiling of achievement. And every one of us has the same ceiling of achievement. You have it, Daniel. I have it. All your listeners have it. Any guess on what that might be?
Ceiling on achievement. I would think it's like it's limited by the closest person that you see as an example that you believe you can get to. So I think if you're surrounding yourself with people that are doing more, your ceiling is going to go up to that, maybe beyond as well. But I think if you don't have any good examples, role models around, you're going to be limited by that.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely can be a ceiling of achievement, but the universal ceiling of achievement that I'm talking about that applies to every man, woman, and child walking this earth, it's called 24 hours.
Gotcha.
You cannot do more. So the reality, Daniel, is if I have myself and an administrative person working with me, and I'm going to commit to working, just use a round number, 12 hours a day, I can actually go buy 8 hours from somebody else. And now I don't have a 12-hour workday. I have a 20-hour workday because I have my 12 and I have their 8. And before you know it, if I was to hire another person and get 8 hours from them, well, there's only 24 hours in a day, but now I have 24 hours just in 26 hours. I have more than a day's worth at my disposal. I have my 10 hours. I have 8 from one. I have 8 from another. I have 26 hours. And I started to realize that leverage would give me the ability to now go and do what was most important, which in real estate, it's lead generation. In most businesses, it's some level of lead generation. And so that was my first hire was administrative person. And then I made another hire administratively. So I actually had 2 administrative people working for me because I had not capped out on my potential to generate business. And when you're small, you need to keep it small and keep it all. And that's the fastest way to get out of debt, is to build a small business, keep your expenses really low, keep your salaries really low, and then take the profits and either reinvest them into the business and go to pay off your debt. When you look at wealth creation, there's two ways to build wealth, right? So one of those ways to build wealth, and this is what I looked at, is I can continually increase my my income, which we're going to call, for the purpose of this, our vertical income, right? And if I keep doing that, a lot of people increase their vertical income, but they also increase their expenses along the way. You know, I made more money, I buy a bigger house. I made more money, I buy a bigger car. Well, over those 3 years, I actually drove a car. I was the #1 real estate agent selling 100 houses a year with one single agent, 2 admin people, selling 100 houses minimum, #1 agent in my office. And I drove a Ford Explorer that was from a company called Progressive Insurance. Progressive Insurance is a local insurance company, and they had little stickers on the side. So they peeled the stickers off. They sold me the car for $750. And when they peeled the sticker off, the glue was kind of still on there. So when pollen would hit the car or dirt would hit the car, it'd say Progressive in dirt on the side of my car. But I was making $300,000, $400,000 a year. I had all these debts to pay out. I had 3 foreclosures I had to pay off. I had IRS taxes I had to pay off. I had to buy a new house. I had to do all this stuff. So I was more concerned with being rich than I was being famous, and make sure we unpack that later. So what I did is, not only did I increase my vertical income, but I started to also decrease my expenses. See, if you can decrease your expenses, then now all of a sudden you have more discretionary income. See, what a lot of the rich do, and I mean, it's in the book called The Millionaire Next Door, you'll realize that a lot of the rich don't drive Lamborghinis. They don't drive Lamborghinis. They don't need a Lamborghini. They recognize they don't have, 17 houses. They have a house they love to live in. Maybe they have a vacation home. They wear blue jeans. They don't wear, $5,000 or $10,000 Armani suits everywhere they go. They're smart with their money. They invest in real estate. Well, I read that book during this time, and I started doing that myself. So next thing I did is I started associating myself with bigger thinkers in the coaching realm that I was in. And so when I hit the 100 homes, I was the #1 agent in my office. I've been the #1 agent in my office since I arrived here. I recognized that there's a philosophy that's called, don't do the best you can do. Go attempt to be the best that can be done. So right now, my team is selling, between our team here in Orlando, Atlanta, and Ocala, we'll do right at 400 houses a year, but we'll do that at a 40 to 45% profit margin still. We still are crazy profitable. I don't have to sell 1,000 homes to have the same profit that other companies that sell 1,000 homes do. Now, with that being said, there's teams like yours. There's teams like Lance Lokins, a friend of mine in Houston, Texas, Ben Kenny up in Bellingham, Washington, that are literally selling thousands of homes. Thousands of homes. Well, if I'm going to compare myself against the best that I can do, well, then I've reached it. I want to compare myself against the best that can be done, which is the people that are ahead of me. And then as long as I'm hitting those profit numbers, I'm going to continue to grow. So then the next thing we did is we just kind of continued to run this thing like a business, not like a job. Started paying attention to profitability over everything else. Profitability matters more than everything else. And profit in an organization is not a dirty word. It's something that should be talked about by the men and women that work there. The ladies and gentlemen that work in that organization should also be focusing on making sure the company makes more money. Now, the issue that real estate agents have is they say things like, well, Dan's going to make X as the owner of the company, and then the agents make X, and then the admin team makes X. But the reality is most people don't go to work somewhere or join a company and say, like, it's a bunch of bull crap. I only make $25,000 a year, and Sears is making $2 million or $2 million. Nobody complains about what Sears makes when they work at Sears, do they?
No, you're absolutely right about that.
Or Southwest Airlines or any company, but we create an environment as the leaders where it's what I make. Well, we don't talk about that here at our team. We don't talk about what Dan makes. What we talk about is what the company is generating. It's the responsibility of all the people that work here to protect the mothership, to make sure the company is profitable. And yes, as a steward of that money, I have the ability to make those profits. And I'm entitled to do that because I own a business. Real estate agents largely don't understand that they own a business. They do not think of their business as a business. And as a result, when they build teams, they build this me versus you attitude. I think it's an inappropriate way to run a business. And usually what that ends up being is a high level of job dissatisfaction and a lot of turnover.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And hats off to you for starting your team the right way, going out and getting those 2 admin, dialing down your support, your system so you can focus on lead gen. And then after that, you added buyer's agents. I see a lot of real estate agents who make the mistake of going out and getting a buyer's agent first. And then now you got 2 people in sales and no one's doing the admin support, and you're giving up too much of your commission because you went buyer agent first instead of fixed salary first. And I think it comes from like a scarcity and fear to go out and make that fixed, cost higher, which actually is more profitable and will lead to more growth. I think that's why a lot of agents who try the team thing don't succeed in it, because they start it the wrong way and then they just give up after it doesn't work once. So, I think that's great that you started it the way that you did.
Well, thank you. Well, a lot of it was just following models of businesses. I mean, we just followed the models and just had this blind faith that it would work. What's crazy is when you hire a buyer's agent first, there's two sides of this I'd like to talk about. Number one is, if that buyer agent, like the worst thing that can happen if you are a successful listing agent and then you go, well, I'm too busy, I'm just going to hire a buyer agent and have them take care of my buyer so I can make money passively from them. That's the thought behind it, right? Do you know the mistake with that is that the worst thing that can happen is they could actually be successful as buyer's agents. Because most people think a buyer agent is a newer agent, and that's typically what they do. Like, I'm going to handle the listings and you're a newer agent, so I'm going to bring you in to work the buyers. So you have this newer agent, this junior agent that is going to represent buyers on your behalf. And the worst thing that can happen is they could be gung-ho and they can go out there and do a lot of business, because they do a lot of business, and then they come back and they got paperwork that needs to be done. And they need help with that paperwork. So who ends up either doing that paperwork or helping them with that paperwork, Daniel?
Yeah, it's going to be you, and then you're going to get less listings. You're going to generate less leads. You're not going to be able to market as much.
So what ends up happening is exactly right. Is you're going to give them a listing. You're going to give them a buyer. You're going to offer to pay them 50% of the commission when it closes. So usually the buyer comes from the listing agent. Then you're going to pass it over to this buyer agent. The buyer agent's going to cultivate it. They're going to have paperwork. They're going to need help. You're going to end up either doing the paperwork, helping them accomplish the closing, or doing the paperwork for them. Then you're going to pay them 50%. So in essence, you just became their admin person. And you're paying them 50% to be their admin person. So you take the admin role for them instead of you working that buyer and paying someone else $15 an hour. You're paying $2,000 an hour, $2,000, $3,000 to be, so you can be their admin, as opposed to hiring an admin and keeping 80% of the profits, 90% of the profits on that.
I completely agree. I mean, that's exactly what you're doing. It's just ass backwards to say it, succinctly.
Yeah, well, and then here's the next one after that. The next interesting piece behind that is you've got this competitive thought process. And let's really think about that, Daniel. And let's break it down. And I want your listeners to get some real value out of this conversation. So I just want to be real. And I hope you're okay with that. I hope your listeners are okay with that. No one's going to share this with you probably other than a podcast like Daniel's doing, because he's willing to be vulnerable and raw. So let's go here. The competing philosophy in business. Number one, do I want to be famous or do I want to be rich? If you want to be famous, it sounds really good to say, I'm Dan Grieb. I have 5 buyer's agents. Really? You have 5 buyer's agents? Oh my God, you have 5 agents working for you. You're amazing. In the world of Instagram fame and Facebook, like, that sounds amazing. But you're losing a large portion of your profits to have those 5. Now, if you say, hi, I'm Dan Grieb and I have 2 administrative people, like that doesn't sound very sexy. And those 2 administrative people are not going to be your high I personalities that are pumping you up and making you feel like a god, the genius amongst all the fools. They're going to be telling you, like, get your paperwork right, turn your stuff in, do this, do that. And largely, you're not going to know who the boss is. If you have the right administrative people, they're going to be people that are holding you accountable to going out and lead generating because they need you to continue to make money. Well, guess what? The one that, if you choose the path of rich, you're oftentimes not going to be famous. If you choose the path of famous, you are going to be famous, especially in the world that quickly rewards you for behavior that oftentimes is not justified, but you'll likely not be rich. Now, there is one kind of rich that I'm looking to become. There's only one type of famous that I'm looking to become. Because there is a famous I want to be. Like, I have a desire. I'm 44 years old, and I still have the desire to be famous. Do you mind if I show you what kind of famous that is?
Let's hear it.
Warren Buffett famous. Do you know why Warren Buffett is famous?
He because he got super rich by doing something that worked and by sacrificing or not caring about being famous until he got so rich that he was famous.
Correct. Warren Buffett is famous for being rich. Like, focus your attention on that. Don't worry about the office awards you can get. It's irrelevant. Having the most listing volume does not then transfer to the most profitable business. You know, having the biggest team where you're spending 110% of your income on crazy lead systems, yeah, you have the most closings, but are you profitable? Here's a stat that I heard 3 years ago from my friend Tom Ferry. He said this: of the top 10% of all income earners in real estate agents, so the multi-million-dollar real estate agents. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Let me say it again. Of the top 1% of all income earners in real estate, the top 1% of all income earners in real estate, the multi-million-dollar real estate agents, 90% of them are broke.
I believe that.
Now,
I believe that.
Wait a second. How can you I just dropped like a gigantic bomb on you that the top income earners in our industry are broke, the majority of them, and you just like shook your head and said, I believe that. You didn't even have to think about that. How's that possible?
Yeah, well, the industry focuses too much on rewarding sales volume or GCI, gross commission income, but there's never an award for who made the most profit or who saved the most or kept the most or who's developing passive streams. Like that stuff's just not sexy and not talked about, and no one, you don't get in a lot of situations or groups where those numbers are even shared. So the industry just has a culture of rewarding who's got the most leads, who's got the most closings, instead of who's taking the most to the bottom line.
You know what? And at the end of the day, none of those awards will pay my mortgage. None of those awards will pay for my kids to go to college. None of those awards are going to help me buy a house for my mom so she can live the rest of her life with no worries. None of those are. Matter of fact, for me, I throw all sales awards away after I receive them. I receive them. I'm gracious. I appreciate that. And then I throw them away. Well, what's the sense in having all these awards on the wall to celebrate my successes of last year? Like, that's some false sense of security. I prefer to live in a place like, if you want to give me 2020 sales award, I'll take that one. I'll put that one on the award. 2021s, I'll put that on the award. But not if it's over last year. Like, there are many broke real estate agents that will tell you a story about how they were the top real estate agent back in 1995, 1998, 1999, 2000, 2005. But you know what? I want to be focusing. I want to be known as the guy that had a real profitable business, that served humanity, that built a company where the people that worked here felt like they mattered, that put people over profit and put the people in front of the properties we sell. And that build an empire where not only could I become rich, those around me could become rich as well. Now, I keep throwing out this word rich. So I want to tell you what I mean by rich or wealth. Everybody has their definition of what rich or wealth means. For me, it simply means this: a life free of anxiety. Wealth to me means a life free of anxiety. So I want that.
That's powerful. I think the whole concept of real estate agents who are producing a lot but not making money is powerful, and it serves as a warning, I think, to other people to focus on profits, because that's how you get in the game long term and create value for other people long term. Now, let's switch gears for a minute. I know we've only got a little bit of time left, but tell us briefly what you're doing now to leverage what you've done with your real estate team to help other business owners all across the country.
Well, thank you. Yeah, greatly appreciate that. So I was recently awarded the opportunity to take the models and systems that we've learned to build, the largest real estate company in the world, to other businesses. And all businesses basically sit on the same foundations. All businesses sit on the same foundations. And we call it the wheel of focus. And what that wheel of focus is, it focuses on basically 5 models. Number 1, an economic model, an organizational model, a budget model, accountability model, and an organizational model. Those 5 models, I'm sorry, I said organizational twice, a lead generation model, sorry. So those 5 models are what all businesses stand on. And so we've taken our suite of education and we've brought that to entrepreneurs, business people, salespeople outside of Keller Williams. I own a company with my 2 partners, Charlotte Savoy and Rachel Resch, and we have created something called Integrity Performance Coaching. We do business and performance coaching for businesses outside of real estate. Now, what are some of the businesses that we coach? Well, we're coaching restaurants, podcast people, one of the most famous podcasts out there, the One Thing podcast. We coach that organization. We coach other coaching companies, believe it or not, restaurateurs. We have a couple of eBay white label businesses that we coach, law offices, sales teams, you name it. We're in the market to coach those people. I'm really blessed that my partners have a skill set that I don't have. My first partner, Charlotte Savoy, is the queen of operations. She 100% has the operational side of a business down like I've never seen anybody. Her superpower is operations. My other partner, Rachel, she is the queen of relationships, people, hiring people, training them, leading them, motivating them through the process. Me, I focus largely on business building, accountability, growth, leadership, speaking. That's kind of my role for the company. And we've built a really amazing company in such a short time. We only started in January. We've already got, I think, close to 30 clients. We've got a bunch of coaches that work for us. We're actually talking with Exxon right now to do some things for them. We're helping transition the aging workforce out, bringing in these younger minds into businesses. We're building models and systems for companies all over the United States, and it's starting to go worldwide because we're already in South Africa, and I think we're about to be in the Middle East. We're actually negotiating to have me go speak in Egypt this year, so it's going to be pretty awesome.
That's awesome. Congrats. Sounds like you're off to a great start. This has been an awesome episode, and we're going to have to get you back on later to check back in, see how the coaching business, Integrity Performance Coaching, is doing. So I'm sure you're going to take it to some amazing levels and impact thousands of people. So congrats on that. It's time for the HyperFast lightning round. So we're just going to do 1 minute, see how many questions you can get through. Are you ready?
Go.
All right. Biggest mistake you ever made?
Hiring the wrong people.
Most important advice for a new agent?
Learn how to lead generate over anything else. Spend all your time there.
Same question, but for a veteran agent.
Go back and make sure that you are profitable every year. Cancel all your credit cards at the end of the year and make every expense justify itself.
All right. If you had to start all over again with nothing, what would you do?
I would probably start with a real estate business because it's such a high margin business with a low barrier of entry, and I would continue to build.
All right. Best piece of real estate investment advice?
you should always be an investor. If you're a real estate agent, you should look at every home you list and every home you buy as an opportunity for you to buy it as well. You do not need money to buy real estate.
All right. Favorite mentor?
At this point in my life, it's Gary Keller.
Favorite training event?
Ironman.
All right. And I probably know the answer to this one already, but if we weren't finding you working on your business, working on your coaching business, where would we find you? What would you be doing?
First thing would be hanging out with my best friends, my 2 children, my wife. And outside of that, I'd probably be doing some type of training for, at this point in my life, either Ironman competition or jiu-jitsu tournament.
All right, Dan, thanks a lot. You've been an amazing guest. Before I sign off, if people are looking for help buying or selling a home in the different markets that you serve in Florida or Atlanta, if people want to reach out to you about coaching business owners, how do they get a hold of you? Or if they just want to talk to you, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Yeah, great. So first off is I'm accessible. My phone number is 407-923-1122. That's my cell phone number. You can reach out to me for real estate at dan@home2sell.com. That's HOMETOSELL.com. Or if you'd like to talk about business coaching, it's just go to coachipc.com or dan@coachipc.com.
All right, Dan, thanks a lot. You've been amazing. If you're listening out there and you enjoyed this show, please leave us a comment, give us reviews. That helps us get better and better guests, and share it with someone that you think could benefit from this. And I think a lot of people can benefit from what Dan said today. So thanks a lot, Dan, and thanks a lot, listeners.